Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
Back to the channel. Today we are taking a closer look at a high-stakes exchange on Capitol Hill between Senator Jon Ossoff and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. During a Senate funding hearing regarding ongoing defense operations in the Middle East, Senator Ossoff pressed the Defense Secretary on previous public statements made during the initial weeks of the Iran conflict and Operation Epic Fury. The interaction highlights a major divide in how lawmakers and defense officials evaluate military success, war objectives, and strategic messaging. Let's break down exactly what happened.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your testimony. And General Kane, let me just begin by expressing on behalf of all Georgians our immense gratitude and admiration for the service members who are making tremendous sacrifices and conducting themselves with extraordinary selflessness and professionalism on behalf of the United States and our state's unified condolences and grief for the families of the 4 killed in action and our hope for a swift recovery for the nearly 100 wounded over the last 2 weeks. And thank you to you for your service to the nation. Mr. Hegseth, you're requesting roughly $68 billion for the department through this supplemental, correct?
67, yes.
And yesterday, your department stated publicly, quote, U.S. forces struck Iranian military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems to degrade Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial vessels. That was a press release from your department. Is that a broadly accurate characterization of ongoing operations?
That sounds broadly accurate, yes.
On day 14 of this conflict, Mr. Secretary, day 14, nearly 5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but their capabilities
Mr. Secretary,
at the lowest level
you
they've been in a
stated
very
that
long time.
on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14 Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no, was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the
question?
Iranian military is a historic military
Will you
defeat,
answer the
and
question
they're ineffective
under oath?
in that context.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago. 3 weeks after you'd already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective, you said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels
You need to
in the
answer
Blue Water
the questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and they're gone.
Secretary.
Their Air Force is
4 months
completely
ago.
combat ineffective,
You
and they
said
don't
4
have a
months
defense
ago.
industrial base.
Excuse
So
me,
describe
Mr.
to me a
Secretary.
country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and I will describe to you a country that does not have an effective
Mr.
military.
Secretary, you
It
stated,
can lob missiles.
Mr. Secretary, you stated
missiles,
4
but it's
months
not a
ago
combat
that
effective
Iran's
military.
military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
You stated we had, quote,
build at the level it did before, and not even close. It doesn't mean it doesn't have capabilities.
Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding them that issue. If they don't give them up at the table, there's other ways we can take them away.
Early in the conflict
Iran will
on
never
day
have a
3,
nuclear
Mr.
weapon.
Secretary, early in the conflict, day 3, you said one of those core objectives was to, quote, destroy the missile threat, and as you restated on day 5, to, quote, obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Those were clearly and repeatedly stated core objectives of the campaign, which 4 months ago you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. Ultimately, combat ineffective means they're not able to dig them out of their UGFs and shoot
Had
at
the
us.
missile
It
threat
doesn't mean they
been
don't
defeated
have
4
underground
months
facilities
ago?
where they put missiles in them and hold on to them because they're the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. So we never expected they would stop having capabilities to shoot. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more
The
for the conflict.
senator's time has
Had a
expired.
historic and effective military campaign against the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Won't
and will
answer the
ensure they
question.
never
Senator
get a nuclear weapon,
Peters
Senator.
is recognized.
Exchange opens with Senator Jon Ossoff focusing heavily on statements made by Defense Secretary Hegseth early in the conflict. Ossoff points out that on day 14 of the war, the secretary publicly declared that Iran's military had been destroyed and made combat ineffective. Ossoff repeatedly asks for a direct yes or no answer on whether that assessment was accurate at the time, arguing that declaring victory early creates a disconnect with the ongoing reality on the ground and subsequent requests for tens of billions in additional defense funding. In response, Defense Secretary Hegseth defends the early military assessment by explaining how defense leaders define combat ineffectiveness in a strategic context. He emphasizes that within the first 2 weeks of Operation Epic Fury, Iran's conventional navy was effectively sunk, its air defense capabilities were neutralized, and its primary military manufacturing infrastructure was crippled. From the administration's perspective, stripping a state actor of its naval, aerial, and industrial power projections renders its conventional armed forces combat ineffective, even if residual asymmetric threats remain. If you are enjoying this breakdown and want to stay updated on key congressional hearings and policy debates, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and turn on notifications. As the questioning continues, Ossoff points to statements from days 3 and 5 of the conflict, where officials cited the total elimination of missile and drone threats as core objectives. He questions how the administration could declare that every single objective was achieved 4 months prior if missile engagements persist. Hegseth counters by clarifying the scope of strategic objectives. He notes that military assessments never claimed every underground missile was wiped out, but rather that Iran's ability to launch sustained large-scale offensive operations against the United States was broken. Toward the end of the clip, the debate shifts to long-term outcomes and the primary objective of the intervention. Ossoff references a prior media appearance where an Iranian surrender was discussed, using it to question the administration's current trajectory. Hegseth re-anchors the military's top priority, ensuring Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon to threaten the U.S. or its regional allies. Hegseth maintains that setting Iran's military capabilities back by decades achieved the critical core goal of denying them nuclear capability and neutralizing their heavy warfighting infrastructure. This exchange brings to light a fundamental difference in how military campaigns are measured on Capitol Hill. On one side, lawmakers like Senator Ossoff demand strict accountability between public declarations and ongoing funding requests. On the other side, military leadership under Secretary Hegseth evaluates progress through the strategic degradation of high-level state threats and nuclear prevention. What are your thoughts on this debate? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video.